Hey, so today I just want to talk about the mental static exam, specifically thought process, which is a branch of medicine, psychiatry, and all these things, as you can see. And here I just have drawn out a clock, and here I have an actual watch. And as you can tell, I'm a time wizard. But more importantly, it's 7 p.m. according to the watch, which I have set here. I can get it done. Yeah. Right, so 7 p.m. is going to be the time. And then this is really important because watches are supposed to tell time, and papers are supposed to be used for writing. So you can actually ask a patient, what is this used for? And then you can use that to assess their mental status exam. So ask them, okay, what time is it on the watch? And based on the way they answer the question, you can actually infer a lot. So I have all these things written out as part of thought process. And as you go down, as you work your way down this way, it actually gets progressively worse and worse and sadder, and we'll go through that. So to begin with, right, so it's 7 o'clock on the watch. So in a linear thought process, we would get the answer that it's 7 p.m., right? And the reason I'm using the watch is actually because it's a very good analogy and imagery-wise for what's actually going on. So a linear thought process would be like we're saying here, like 1, 2, 3, 4. You think things out in a line, you have a very linear thought process. Someone looks at the watch and says it's 7 o'clock, they tell you it's 7 p.m. So it's linear, right? Now in a circumstantial thought process, what may happen is you might start off over here and then work around, but eventually get to the answer about 7 p.m. So patient might start off saying something like, they look at the watch and then they're like, oh, it's time for Jeopardy. And Jeopardy is this game where these things happen and there's like this trivia. And by the way, that happens at 7 p.m. So they would eventually answer your question. It just would be in a roundabout way. And notice it's counterclockwise because it usually is not the way you would expect things to go. Tangential is exactly what it sounds like. There's a tangent. So you might start off at 7 o'clock and then you might move on to the idea of, okay, 7 is a number, that's a number. Let's go off on a tangent about numbers. Numbers have telephone numbers. We'll start talking about iPhones. But importantly, you can see that connection, that 7 is a number, and then from a number you can go to telephone numbers. In loose associations, what you have here is you have these tangents, but then they turn into, whole ideas. So here we still have this watch, right? If you'll notice, it's just one watch. In looseness associations, we start going into other watches. So you'll start going from the 7 p.m. to this idea of numbers, to this idea that Maryland, which was the 7th state to join the Union in the United States of America. And so these things are all connected, you'll see, right? So this is loosely connected to this idea, loosely connected to this idea, loosely connected to this idea, but eventually we'll start talking about the USA, right? So we're looking at a watch, okay, and then all of a sudden the patient will start talking about USA. So that is a very loose association. Now, 1 degree worse than that would be flight of ideas. And this one I wanted to illustrate a little bit larger because it builds on this this watch analogy and this imagery that we're using. So you start off with the number 7, so it's 7 p.m., right? By the way, you can tell it's 7 p.m. because if you look really closely, the watch is pink. I know, I have great jokes. But anyway, it's 7 p.m. and then the patient will start talking about this number 3. Now, what you'll notice here is that in between, there's this number. So you'll go from 7 to 3. This actually is kind of cheating. I just wanted to make it a little bit easier. But in flight, you would really go to a whole different concept. But I just wanted to see here, so from 7 to 3, instead of going to the number 7, right, this person is skipping this idea of numbers and just talking about 3. And then from here, they're skipping this concept. So this is the speech. And then you could think of this as the thought of what's going on. So we can't see thoughts. We can only interpret speech, right? So they speak about the word 3. They speak about Bruce Springsteen. And they speak about sports. Seemingly unrelated, but if you investigate a little further, you realize that 7 p.m., that's a number. 3, that's also a number. 3 is also the state, like New Jersey is the 3rd state to join the Union. Bruce Springsteen is from New Jersey. This dude's a singer and he's mad talented. Talented people are able to play sports. So someone like LeBron or something, you might be able to start talking about LeBron from going from looking at a watch to now looking at something totally different. You're talking about something differently. And finally, we have word salad. Word salad is very interesting. It's also very, very sad because the patients will be talking about things that are seemingly unrelated, because they are unrelated, because there's a problem in the processing centers of the brain that aren't able to articulate language, and also have difficulty understanding. I think understanding language is actually okay. It's usually the articulation of the language. So you'll get really interesting, kind of poetic things. So you'll maybe talking about like oatmeal, and then you'll be talking about I don't know, light bulb, and then you could be talking about antacids. Okay, these things are unrelated. There's nothing relating to these things, and there's no way I could possibly get them to relate. Maybe if I was really, really smart, maybe perhaps one of you could. But the idea is that these things are so unrelated, and there's no bridge, there's no grammar, there's no syntax between them connecting these phrases that makes it really, really difficult to understand. So again, in review here, we just have this thought process. Thought process is part of the mental status exam. And you start off with linear, circumstantial, tangential, loose, flight of ideas, word salad, and again, progressively getting worse as you go down. Here are some examples of what a conversation might sound like, and here are some examples of what it might look like to help you get a better concept. So please, I hope you benefited, and if you have any other questions, please let me know.